Hey everyone, welcome back to the Teens for Business podcast. I'm your host, Ivan.
I'm Jack.
I'm Jackie.
I'm Kylan.
So today we'll be celebrating our 1 year anniversary. So the 1 year since we first uploaded our first Spotify episode, in addition to celebrating the coming of a new year. So what are you guys' New Year resolutions?
Oh, okay, I can go first. I think like we could talk about like podcast ones and then we can also just talk about ourselves. But I think personally, my New Year's resolution is to not sleep beyond 2 a.m. anymore. That is definitely one of mine. I think sleep is very important and I think waking up at 6:30 every morning is not ideal. So I have to sleep earlier and not get like 3 hours every night. That's my New Year's resolution.
Yeah, I have a really similar New Year's resolution to that, so I'm gonna say another one. I plan to exercise more as like this past few weeks. I had to focus more on like college apps and do that stuff. And then I kind of like lost a little bit of like exercise time, so I need to get back into that trend going into 2024 and then beyond.
Yeah, I think I agree with Jack. I think just like being committed to like with college apps and everything and like the stress of that, just transitioning to the new year and like making sure to hold yourself accountable in terms of like personal health and physical health and things like that. So yeah, working out and doing eating properly and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess we can see like some sort of trend, but I'm just gonna hop onto that trend. So yeah, basically I think, well, I wouldn't say like I wouldn't sleep past 2 a.m. I think that's inevitable for me. But I feel like if I do sleep past a certain time point, I should get a certain amount of hours of sleep every night. Preferably also not also sleep past a certain time frame. So I think for my New Year's resolution, I think just getting enough sleep and not, waking up in the morning and then feeling absolutely like ran over by a train. Um, so I think we can also mention what do you want for our New Year resolutions for a podcast.
I think for the podcast, sticking to like an uploading schedule, like whether that's on YouTube, Spotify, or Instagram posts, I think being consistent, just having a set schedule, be like, okay, like every Sunday at 5 p.m. is when we publish, like every Monday, whenever. I think like having a schedule would really help us be more on track and get everything together.
Yeah, I agree with that. Also, like I think maybe input in like terms of like what are the choices with like we like analyze on the podcast, what topics that we analyze, we could bring like more topics together. We could like bring certain a lot of like different events together. Like last year we had a lot of episodes and a big variety of topics, but we also had some episodes that overlapped with each other in terms of like when we tracked like AI and stuff like that. There were a lot of episodes around that sort of topic. So I think we can also like broaden the diversity of the topics that we discuss in the podcast.
Yeah, I agree. I think just like taking what we've learned, I guess, throughout just our entire process and experience of creating this podcast and making so many episodes and building off that and like continuing to get a variety of content like getting new guest speakers, getting guests on here and just continuing to I guess yeah, make episodes and I guess learning along the way as well.
Yeah, I also think that for this coming new year, I feel like our podcast could bring in more guest speakers because we recently had like a few this past year, and I feel like a bit more would spice up a little our episodes a bit more, and we also like if we like after this season of college, as I feel like all of us could have a bit more time to focus on the podcast, and um maybe we can launch some new things or maybe go even more in depth in our episodes to go into stuff like people usually won't hear about. So I think that will be also a great New Year's resolution for our podcast. And what skills do each of you guys want to acquire or improve upon this year?
I think that's a good question. Before I answer that, I just want to say, for everyone listening, just a sneak peek, we are gonna have a guest coming like sometime mid or like later January, um, from Boston. So keep an eye out for that. And then in terms of the actual question this time, what skills, I think there's a lot because new year, obviously. I think one thing is like looking forward to college. I think I want to learn to be like a little bit more independent, like know how to do like adulting stuff or like whatever college stuff is, like just preparing for August, September, whatever that starts. And I think that's like pretty important for like all of us, I would say. Just because especially since that transition, like I'm sure like we've all like been away from our parents more than like a while at a time. Like I'm sure like that's not new to us. But I think like living like us away from home is like still like pretty like it's different than just like being away for like 3 weeks or like being away for a month. So I think definitely that's something I want to learn to do. And not like, oh, like if I have a problem, okay, I'll just ask them like food and I don't know, they'll just cook it, like things like that. So I think that's something that'd be really interesting to learn. And then just making sure I don't like die on my own. I mean, I don't think I will, but I just think like, skills to learn. So definitely that's one thing. And then in terms of this podcast, I don't know if like new skills is perhaps the best way to say it, but I think like improving on the way like we kind of do some things. Maybe it'd be fun if we had like video editing or like we upped our Instagram content a little bit more, made a few more like shorter form like reels, things like that, put like little clips in. I think that would definitely be really fun to see on the side of the podcast.
Yeah, I agree. I think for me, at least also for like transitioning to college, I also have a similar goal with like Jackie mentioned, like with being more independent. But also I feel like networking is like super important and that's a skill I want to build on because like when you get to college, you don't you have to make a lot of like new friends and stuff and you find new interests and you do that through like networking. So I think that's going to be very important for college and also beyond college, right? When you go into a job, you have to like have like a good network so you can like work efficiently, work effectively, and those are like really important skills that you need to be successful in not just college, no, and in the workplace, but just anything like beyond that. And also like just for this podcast, just like what Jackie said, potentially more like creative like content ideas we can do to like bring up our publicity a little bit more, just make our podcast look a little bit more fun and more vibrant.
Yeah, definitely agree with both Jack and Jackie's point about both like, once you get to college, you're basically on your own in terms of problem solving. You got to like figure out how to do everything by yourself. Like you can't, I mean, you can ask for help, but it's not like living at home where your parents can do stuff for you. And yeah, I definitely think like in college, it's a completely different environment. You might be like halfway across the country and you just gotta know how to network, how to build relationships with people like on the spot, and then like just going to different clubs or whatever, and just learning to talk to complete strangers. And yeah, I think those are two like very valuable skills for me to kind of build and to learn throughout the process of going to college. Yeah.
Yeah, I think probably the same thing for me. And I know there's certain thing called like freshman 15 where you like gain or lose 15 pounds in your freshman year. And I feel like when I go to college, I'll definitely be the one who gains 15 pounds. So I think a skill I want to gain is probably, learning how to learning how to like cook something other than instant noodles. And something that's like not like following recipes online and taking like 2 hours to cook, but like knowing how to like throw things together. If like because like sometimes college food you might not be able to go to the dining halls or you might not want to go to the dining halls. So I feel like a valuable skill would be like learning how to cook, but also managing learning how to like proportion yourself. Like I feel like even though I might like eat much better at home than in college. I feel like in college I would be someone who eats everything they see and does not eat a single green. So I think a skill probably would be like cooking, but also, having a balanced diet and not going overboard with all like the junk food and like going to like a dirty bulking stage. And I think that would be definitely very helpful for in college. And so we do mention college a lot in this episode and sleeping, eating, whatever. So how do we plan to like maintain this healthy work-life balance, especially in the coming year where we move into a very different environment?
I think one thing I was thinking about is like starting earlier. Like obviously you can't simulate like living by yourself or like with roommates. That's just like something you can't do. But I think like a lot of the habits that you kind of like want to continue in college, like you can just start earlier now, because it's always, I think, easier to like continue a habit than like start something. And it's definitely going to be easier starting it now than like starting when you're in like a completely new environment. And like that kind of goes back to my first thing about like sleeping earlier. I think it's going to be a lot easier like to actually start sleeping earlier, like if I do that right now, as opposed to like moving into college and then being like, oh, like I'm no longer going to sleep at 2 a.m. every night, like I will sleep at 12. Like I think it's a lot easier to shift that mindset if you're still in high school, because I think like after college apps now, I still have like a lot of other commitments, but like, you know, like writing essays, making sure like my Common App everything is correct, like that's all gone. So like, yeah, I might not be able to sleep at like 8 o'clock every day, but like I think a solid 1 a.m. or like solid midnight is a good way to go. And like once you kind of go into college, like also because like you're not waking up at 6:30 every day because you don't have classes that early. So I think like having that shift would be like pretty like a good start. So just like keeping those healthy habits. And like I know like you guys were talking about like other things like exercising, like learning to cook. I feel like some of those definitely would apply to me too. And I think just starting early, like learning to cook now instead of like going to my first day of college and be like, okay, let's try to use a stove. I mean, like I do know how to cook, but like I'm just saying, like following recipes and like learning to cook different things that like you just wouldn't like you would find at like a college dorm refrigerator. So I think like starting now, again, like maybe with the basics more so than like whatever I can find in my fridge right now. I think that's definitely a good idea.
Yeah, that's definitely a good idea. Like over the past week, my sleep schedule has been completely screwed. I've been up at 3 usually working at college apps, and I've obviously sacrificed like a little bit like exercise time and more like fun time that I like to spend with my family and some of my friends. So that's definitely a balance that I want to like start like doing during like now as I prepare for college. And like again, like sleeping early, like Jackie mentioned, that's definitely something that we could do to maintain a healthy work-life balance this year. And also, for me at least, it's also time management because sometimes you're going to be like drawn to like different things. Sometimes you want to have work, but you also want to have fun at the same time. But you have to, there's like a trade-off between that. You can't have, but most of the time you can't have both. So you need to figure out what you want to like do that during like that time and what do you want to do like another time so you can allocate your time like efficiently, get stuff done, have fun, and also maintain your body.
Yeah, definitely. I think the thing is like at college, the workload that we're gonna get is gonna be like a lot compared to what we had in high school. Most likely if you're taking like honors classes and whatnot. But I think it's like learning how to, I guess, set realistic goals and also like know what tasks to kind of prioritize when you're working on this. Like in terms of like time management, I guess you gotta like figure out what's most important and how you're going to break it down. I think that's what something we all learned through like applying to college, kind of figure out what you need to do first and prioritize that in order to have these like finish everything, you're going to have to break it down first. And that's how you're going to be able to kind of like actually achieve like these small goals and keep like you on task and like so you aren't like super stressed out.
Yeah, I feel like a healthy mindset going into the new year would definitely also maintain a healthy work-life balance, because if you go in with the mindset be like, oh, I'll just follow my usual habits of sleeping late, eating unhealthy, not exercising, doing whatever without any control and restraint, I think that will just not do you any good. So I feel like this year definitely making a change would be having a better mindset. And also, that also comes with, getting the, like that Jackie said, getting habits early on, so that would be easier to be carried on into new year. And it's like creating habits when you still can, and then making sure to not break those habits in college and a different environment. And so going to our business and economic roots, so what do you think are the emerging business and economic trends that we anticipate will gain prominence in this new year?
Um, I think it's always interesting to like predict like what happens next. And I think like economic trends, there's a lot, but like in terms of like specific things that we see, um, I can just like speak to the ones like I'm like more familiar with. And I think like there's just so many aspects of it. And I think like one thing that I particularly see a lot with the industries I keep up with is that like there's a lot of like cycling. And like obviously that's true, like the general economic cycle as a whole. Like when we're going like specific, it's like specific products, specific trends, specific things that like you see on the news, like on TikTok, on like social media, like those kind of trends with the products that we buy. And I think this year there was a very big focus on like minimalism, a lot of focus on like I mean, I don't know if you guys would know, but like clean your own makeup, like very stylish, very chic, very just bare bones kind of thing. But I think like it kind of all cycles, and I think what we're returning to a lot with like trends, like going back to like the more maximal aspect, like with makeup, but like also with clothing. Like we see that with a lot of like these fashion shows, and we see that with a lot of like the higher end kind of like what sets the fashion trends. And so I think like clothing, so like not just like higher end like boutique shops, but also we see that with like regular clothing that you can just go to the mall and get. So I think definitely trends like that. And I think like this year there's a lot of focus on like, oh, like how do you like not spend that much, how do you like just buy exactly what you need. But I think like what's been popularized was like starting to come back up is like, oh, like hey, look at this like very extravagant thing, like that's so cool, like this glam look. And so I think like that's coming back in trend. So like shopping and like obviously that ties into like economic balance as well, but like I'm just saying like for like specific trends, like I know that's not like a general economic trend, but like just specific things, I think that definitely is something to look at. And I just wanted to touch upon a point, like because I think that was also quite interesting, like when we look at like the economy as a whole, like there's obviously trends, right? So like inflation, deflation, that those like like all the curves that we learned about. And I think like when specific products as well, like that kind of also like goes in and out, like it cycles back and forth. So I think like that's going to be really interesting to look at, like regardless of like the actual how the economy is doing. So I think that's something to keep an eye out for, and just see how like it's interesting how like it follows kind of the cycle, and everything's just like it's kind of unpredictable, but at the same time like you can kind of see like what's happening based on like what's happened 10-20 years ago.
Yeah, I definitely agree that like shopping is something that's going to be very interesting to watch. Like technically, like in the past 4 years, we've obviously seen a lot of things change. Like COVID hit, and we spent 2.5 years basically at home without many shopping, and some businesses kind of suffered from that. But now 2023 was like almost like the first full year that we like completely went back. Obviously now in like December, there's a little bit of a COVID like rise, but like I'm not going to be sure if that's going to be too severe going into 2024. So I think shopping trends in 2024 will definitely grow from 2023, and it'll be exciting to see that like go up and see how the GDP could be affected by that, how the economy could be affected like that. And like a lot of people some people are potentially predicting like a potential like stagflation in most economies. Like we have a recession in China right now, but some other economies are in inflation. So I think the world economy, we need to like watch like the trends related to those. And a business trend that we obviously knew a lot about from last year, and it's definitely going to continue going into this year, and it's AI. I think that was pretty obvious going. And I think AI could definitely play a much larger role in shaping a lot of different industries and lots of like different businesses going into like this new year. We're definitely going to see a lot of new trending features that come up from AI and technology, and just seeing those develop will be very exciting to see this year.
Yeah, exactly. I think the main thing is like AI and robots. I think I saw a news story the other day. It's kind of like it's crazy actually. Like a Tesla worker in te Texas got attacked by a robot that he was like working on. And yeah, I just think that yeah, like robots and artificial intelligence is just gonna continue like dominating the storylines going into next year, as well as like continue advancements in technology like renewable energy, clean technologies, and things like that. Just more tech centered, everything going towards the tech space. And I feel like that's definitely going to be the main things going into next year.
Yeah, I some trends I want to point out probably be remote work, and I know like a lot of bunch of tech companies and stuff are trying to force their people to come in to work a certain numbers of days in a week. But I feel like that remote work will still continue on because recently saw a news article that um, Korea passed a law that allows people from other nations to remote work in Korea for extended period of time. That is like, I think it's like much longer than their tourism visa. And so I think like a lot of countries are knowing that a lot of people are working from home, working remotely. So they're trying to incentivize and try to boost their economy because like Jack said, there's a lot of financial predictions right now are saying that the world economy will slow down. So these countries are gonna be try to bring in people to prevent that slowdown from happening too soon, and bringing people from other countries, the people who have money mostly, and like a lot of cruises are doing world tours that are costing like $100,000. So I feel like that trend will continue because people are able to work excuse me to work remotely. Like I know a bunch of doctors, like radiologists, they don't need to work. They don't need to go to the hospital at all. Like they just stay at home and then review CT, X-ray images, and a bunch of other jobs don't require you to go to the office anymore. And especially with the increase in like internet and technology, your computers are getting much faster. I feel a lot of jobs are able to work remotely rather than in person. And another trend probably be AI. And as like Jackie Kaiwan said, AI is a very scary thing, but it's growing very fast. And I feel like the recent OpenAI drama and like I feel like that will kind of, and then Google releasing their new AI, which is not Bard's. But I feel like that will kind of open the eyes to a bunch of consumers on AI's limitations actually, because a lot of companies are trying to slow down the growth of AI, and a lot of the government also wants to slow down the growth of AI. So I feel like we'll be able to see a bunch of AI and machine learning algorithms to see their limitations, and because of this restriction, but also because of our technology's restriction. Because I think the rate of AI is actually growing much faster than how our technology is developing, because we're kind of reaching this ceiling on how small we can make these chips. And yeah, I think that will be very interesting to see like whether it will continue growing or it will stagnate, and because of like ethical concerns and also technology restrictions. And so what are specific industries or sectors that we want to keep a close eye on this year?
I think you kind of like mentioned it, but I think AI is definitely one of the big trends. Um, and I think like a lot of applications, like we see a lot of like these startup companies with like coming out with AI. But I think also if we look at it from like more of like a going back to teens for business, I think a lot of people like there's a lot of platforms like ChatGPT, obviously is the first one that comes to mind. But I think there have been like a lot of different like things similar to ChatGPT that have come out that I've seen like some of my friends use. And I definitely think that there's going to be an expansion of those kinds of tools, like looking at it from that perspective. And I think like that field of like AI, like also like as Ivan mentioned, like there's a lot of different fields of AI, right? It's not just like, oh yeah, like using it to help us with understanding something like in school. Like there's so many different fields, but I think like specifically looking at it from like the teens for business standpoint, I think we're going to see a lot more like applications we can use it for, like hopefully improvements into like the tools, like academic tools. And I think like also there is going to be a lot more teachers using AI to like help them with their work. It's not just like students like using it like to understand some kind of like textbook, using it for etc. I think like also just from the teacher side we see that as well. Another thing I think is very like kind of centered towards this like e-commerce thing, like it's very like online centric now. I think like recently we've seen like TikTok shop be like super popular. We've seen like obviously like that's not the biggest example, but just like different like online e-commerce platforms. And I think like that's something to keep an eye out for, because during the pandemic we were kind of all like, oh well, we can't go outside, so we're just going to go online shopping, right? So and that kind of trend hasn't really died down. Like obviously people have like started going back to in-person shops, but at the same time like that trend of online shopping still hasn't died down. And I think a lot of people have realized just how like convenient and efficient it is to just place an order online. And so I think that's also something to look out for, and I'm excited to see like what kind of new platforms come back up.
Yeah, I definitely agree with everything that Jackie said. I want to add on to her point about AI, and that isn't just those like AI startups or like big companies that are developing AI that we definitely want to like look for, and I want to keep a close eye out for. It's also those like semiconductor companies and like chip industries that produce like the chips, the GPUs, and the CPUs that are involved in everything that is part of AI. So we could definitely see how these companies, these industries are very like interchangeable, and like we could see that whatever like effect, whatever like impact one industry has, or an event on one industry may also impact the other like pretty correspondingly. So we could definitely see how those industries like really match up, and we will definitely, and whatever happens in one will pretty much happen in the other most likely. So that's something that I think is good to look out for. Another industry that I want to keep an eye on is the logistics industry, because right now there's like a global freight recession. And we recently also did an episode about the Yellow Corporation bankruptcy, which is an a side effect of that like global freight recession, that they couldn't have they didn't they had too much inventory, but they couldn't run enough like service. So that is another like associated effect of the logistic industry and like supply chain management that I want to look out for. Sports is also an industry that I want to look out for and keep a close eye on. Obviously, the NFL playoffs are coming up, so I think we're gonna do like one or two episodes about that. That'll be really interesting, and also to see the developments in the social media market, like Twitter, X, and Threads, and like Facebook, Meta, and like other these like companies. See how they develop, what new features they add. Those are some specific industries and like specific like I guess like companies that I also want to keep an eye on, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that. I think that, yeah, just like what we already mentioned with like AI and different, just technology in general, I guess, just different how software is developing, cloud computing and things like that. I think overall, I think we're moving to a place where like jobs are going to get taken by robots, by machine learning and things like that. And where people like yeah, like Jack mentioned, I think where like teachers and students can both use this like technology to help with their work. I think everyone can, no matter like what sector you're working in. So just overall this development of switching to technology and trying to find a job that isn't going to be replaceable by a robot.
Yeah, I definitely agree with all these points about the risks of AI, but I also want to mention like some things I want to look at personally is definitely the two industries, healthcare and cybersecurity. And healthcare, like we have seen a bunch of new things being made, like the mRNA vaccine for COVID-19, which won the Nobel Prize, and also like you have the surgical arms, the robots that many surgeons are using and being able to make precise movements. But I feel like all these technologies are probably going to be quicker to develop, especially with our new and better chips, and then also machine learning. I know we mentioned that a lot of times, but I feel like that will definitely help creating these new technologies. And I feel like this year will be a bunch of new innovation happening in that sector. But also cybersecurity, because we mentioned a lot about AI, chips and stuff like that. And like we're growing like into this new year. A lot of things are going to remain virtual and it become virtual. And I think a lot of our information and privacy, especially for companies, are being held in online databases or in their servers. And exceeding more and more information, very valuable information, and people are gonna want to get their hands on it to sell for money. And I feel like cybersecurity would be a rising field in order to prevent that stuff. And I've seen a lot of things like I think it was Cloudflare. They're using lava lamps to generate random numbers for their security codes, and and I feel like that as we utilize these new technologies, these security codes and strategies are going to change because it's kind of like a war, like when I find a new way to generate security codes, and then another person finds a new way to hack into these, like find these security codes and hack into our software databases. And I feel like especially with our new technology, and like a couple months ago they made a supercomputer, and then that will also change the way we create security codes. So I feel like that field, cybersecurity, will be a very valuable and important field that we should look into this year. Anyways, that's all from us for this episode. And then yeah, definitely happy new year to all the listeners, and make sure to tune in for more episodes this year.